they come out to appear to challenge the government on a couple of matters that they have already declared their position on. We have seen Right Honorable Raila Odinga as well as Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka coming together to look at some of the matters that have been addressed by the Kenya Kwanza government. Some they have decided to castigate as they call upon Kenyans to come together to make sure that they take that government to account. And in 30 days, we want to look at what it is that President William Ruto has managed to do for the people of Kenya as questions continue to linger, as we also await just when he sets his government to take it rolling. And so welcome on board. That is what we'll be looking at and so much more as we see these adjustments, realignments. Yesterday, the Parliament discussing the President's speech on the first moment where he got to open the Parliament, as well just looking at some of the promises that he made. Those ones that are on the majority side appear to differ with some of the matters that the President addressed, while others say that it is time for them to wait because then this presidency will definitely surprise the people of Kenya as it gets to surprise the minority side. We definitely look at this and so much more. Welcome on board. Remember as well, it's a Wednesday and therefore Tasty Wednesday coming your way as we get to hit the kitchen to know how best we can prepare some of the meals that we'll be having. So don't you go anywhere. That should be towards the last hour of the program. But before then, we have the papers as well as that candid conversation that will revolve around the matters that I've touched on and so much more. My name is Linda Alela. This is Morning Cafe right here on TV47. It is great to have you and looking forward to greatness as we all get to learn, are informed, as well entertained on this very program that kickstarts your day on a very good note. The Standard newspaper, the People Daily, and the Daily Nation are the papers that we have this morning. The Standard newspaper front page, exactly what it is that I've started by touching. Raila Amolo Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, the new plan to rein in Ruto, and the Azimio leaders lead onslaught against the lifting of ban on GMOs, saying the country is ill prepared for the adoption of genetically modified foods, and join Kenyans in protesting the high cost of living. This is captured on page 4, and indeed it's not been rosy this very 30 days. Instead of the high cost of living going down, indeed the prices of commodities have shot up. Now, the Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka says the vacating on the ban for GMOs opens up Kenya to diverse challenges and threats, with the Kenya multi-billion food markets being susceptible to strangulation by profit-hungry multinationals handing over our food sovereignty to corporate manipulators. And so we'll be getting to see these reactions and how they're going to be received by Kenyans as well as those ones that sit in government. Remember last week there was that lift of the ban of a 10-year term or a 10-year long period, that is, as to the ban of GMOs, as they say that this would be ultimately the biggest way of making sure that as a country then we deal with the food crisis and the high cost of living that we experience right now, perhaps also coming in to make sure that we boost the economy and guaranteeing every other Kenyan a plate of food, at least in their very own home and at an affordable rate. And President plans to sell about 10 parastatals by end of 2023 as well. That's a story captured on page 6, and that is some of the things that he's made in terms of adjustments once he gets into power, at that moment, that he's got into power, and we get to understand the nitty-gritty details and the in-depth of this move and whether indeed it will welcome a moment of reviving the industries that have since gone down. We're talking about the likes of Mumias not doing so well. We've talked about the likes of KQ not doing so well, and so many other entities that have hugely been parastatals. And at this very moment, there's that need to see to it that they are revived. Safaricom next after Airtel split. A story captured on page 22 that is in the business world, according to them. They speak hugely as to how these, mobile networks are struggling to stay afloat, and definitely a very, very important conversation right there. You can always grab a copy to get to understand some more as to what really they speak of amid this split of Airtel, and what then is the fate of Safaricom. Kipchoge gift organs to save lives. A story captured on page 38. It should be in the sports sector or in the sports bit. Very, very important. And you say, learn to donate body organs to save lives. That's what he says. And the world marathon record holder supports organ donation, saying Africans have come of age to understand life and death. And we're talking about those moments where you have to donate your kidney, those moments that it doesn't have to go to the level of organs. You can as well donate your blood and so much more. Perhaps definitely a conversation that we need to get into in depth, and that as well has been captured on the Standard newspaper. As we also look at what is playing out in the counties, also so much of adjustments in terms of how the counties are managing to get a grip, first of all, and adjusting to the new government. And of course, they say they should set coherent communication policy between the levels of government to make sure that there's that flow of events, and active flow for that matter, or a good flow, so that we see devolution a success. This as members of parliament down to business after House Committee Nord. A story captured on page 8, and we'll be getting to discuss that. We'll be having members of parliament and also a former member of parliament for the very same important conversation. The Daily Nation, COVID scandals, 1.6 billion vaccine doses can't be traced. This is according to audit. The national and county governments cannot account for about 3 million COVID-19 vaccine doses worth at least about 1.6 billion. An alarming special audit report has revealed. And also this brings us to the conversation of the KEMSA scandals, and we also what played out at the National Assembly during this formation of course, the business committee, and most importantly, that moment where they say systems go. Honorable Eden Dwale says that we're going to deal with corruption, and especially those ones that were involved in the scandal of KEMSA. And so we're looking at that. This is quite unfortunate, a report, and definitely Kenyans would be eager to understand what really could have played out. Right Honorable Raila Odinga takes on Ruto. Opposition leaders attack key decisions made by the head of state. Well, on page 7, expounded hugely. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition chiefs Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka attack President William Ruto's government over the rising cost of living and the lifting of a decade-long ban on genetically modified organisms, thus GMOs. And Kalonzo says our biodiversity and national pride in organic seeds will forever be lost to mutated crops. GM crops cannot coexist with organic and non-GM crops due to contamination. And so we'll get to see the reactions of the same, because definitely we're going to get those reactions from the government, from the lieutenants of the president, and so much more. And they speak of why sugar prices are on steep rise. Well, this is a story expounded on page 12. A restriction of cheap sugar imports by the government in the first 8 months of the year without sufficient increase in local production to plug the gap has indeed sharply pushed prices of the sweetener to a high rate. And technically, a majority of commodities are extremely expensive as it is right now, and the government then trying to see to it what adjustments they have to make as they come in, inheriting things in a very tough state. And therefore very, very important that as we speak of a revival of the economy, that we look into these commodities. First of all, we can produce locally even before it gets to levels of us going to import. And 10 state farms to be listed in 1 year. Up to around 10 government-owned farms could be listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange within a year, President William Ruto says. We'll be looking at that. A story captured on page 6 of the Daily Nation. And of course, this finds itself on the front page. Also a very important story here on the question of education and the national examinations to start on November the 28th. This is according to CS Magoha. Marking will be completed in December, and results released by January the 23rd next year. This is captured on page 2. And yes, as it is a very, very important conversation as to how we're able to manage the question of examination. Remember, we're having two, examinations, very important examinations conducted in the country twice a year. And therefore, indeed, it's been a crash program as they look forward now to get back to systems, the normal school calendars as it should be after the unprecedented times occasioned by COVID-19. Ruto falls judges in NSSF contribution row, and court quashed the NSSF Act 2013, which sought to raise monthly contribution that is from current 200. And this dispute then we seek to see how it will be addressed. The President also promised to lobby members of Parliament to ensure monthly contribution is increased, especially this is something that he's been talking about. And speaking of those ones who are getting a high rate of salary or are on the higher scales of their salaries should be paying more than those ones on the lower scales. And NSSF says that progressively it is getting more expensive to collect the 200 and they may as well forget about it. Well, we'll be having this conversation as we continue with the broadcast. Let's now shift gears, briefly take a look at what my team has prepared. And one person has died as a result of hunger, that is in Samburu County, with about over 150,000 people currently facing acute starvation. Samburu is not the only county that has been affected by drought. And according to Red Cross, over 20 counties are affected by drought, as Sharon Baranga reports.
It is a hostile environment, one that is harsh and has forced every living thing here to adjust to the environment after the rains failed for months. Birds scramble for carcasses strewn all over the place. This is the county of Samburu. So bad is the situation that residents have started dying as a result of hunger.
We've also agreed on some very emergency situations that we need to undertake to save the lives of our people. Because, as you know, we are having a drought that's so serious. It's never been seen in the last 50 years. So we are facing an extraordinary situation.
Every drop of water in this county matters. According to Red Cross, over 20 counties are affected by drought. In Wajir County, leaders have held an emergency meeting to find ways they can alleviate the suffering of the residents.
We're not going to allow our people to suffer like they've done in the past. And especially the last drought, which we saw huge and wanton deaths of livestock numbers and also people also facing all the suffering that we saw they suffered.
So as a county government, beginning today, we want to step up the tracking of water to communities and to settlements, and we have asked our water department to bear the cost of all the fuel and all the allowances of drivers. We'll be using 23 water bowsers that belong to the Department of Water and to Wajir Water and Sewerage Company at no cost to the public.
In Narok County, the dry spell is persisting. Leaders in this county held a similar meeting to that of Wajir. Here, more than 100,000 people are at the brink of starvation, and it has been predicted that the county will not be receiving rains anytime soon, at least until next year.
We have identified 115,000 people across the county who are affected, but mostly the areas which are affected are Narok East, part of Narok South, and Narok West. We also have a few pockets of people living here in town, in urban centers. We also have the people living in the camp near Mau. Those people need food.
We have started supplying water to Mosiro schools starting about 2 days ago, and we are monitoring the situation.
Learning in 130 schools in Narok has been affected by drought, and now the county government is planning to revive the school feeding program. Sharon Baranga, TV 47.
Now, a family in Subukia, Nakuru County is in grief after they got shocking news of their daughter's demise, who has been out of reach since March while in Saudi Arabia. Margaret Ruguru left the country in May 2021 in search for greener pastures in the Gulf country as a house girl through a Kenyan recruitment agency, as Chichi Josephine tells us.
The body of Margaret Ruguru, who was 29 years old, has been lying at Dala Hospital in Riyadh for at least 2 months, with some sources indicating that she may have died in May this year.
Tulikuwa na wasiliana naye na simu. Kwa bahati mbaya, kufikia mwezi wa 3, mawasiliano ikakatika. So kutoka wakati huo tumelia tupate mtoto wetu mahali yako. Bakati tumepata ripoti mtoto wetu hayuko.
Her father Michael Wawero explained that when Margaret left the country, trouble started in February this year when she called home to inform them that she had received threats on her life from her employer.
Mahali alikuwa nafanya walimwambia watamuua. Juu remote ya TV imepotea. So mtoto akaona hawezi gojea kifo hapo, akaenda kutafuta njia zingine. Na ndio mtoto wetu alienda zimu ikasimika mpaka wakati tumejua mtoto ameenda.
Wawero revealed that on diverse dates between February and March this year, she maintained communication with her members of the family until March 6th when she last spoke to them.
Mimi niliongea naye mwezi wa 2. Tulikuwa ndani ya hii nyumba yangu. Tulikuwa naongea na WhatsApp.
Tumejaribu njia zote lakini hatukuwa tumefaulu mpaka tarehe 5 mwezi wa 10 ndio alikuwa tumekuja na ikasemekana Magia alifariki.
On Wednesday last week, they received a call from her husband informing them that the Department of Immigration in Nairobi had confirmed her death.
Nilipigwa simu kutoka kwa ofisi ya Immigration, Ministry of Home Affairs. Iko Milimani huko ndio nilikibia. Na nikaelezewa hiyo maneno. Na kile kijana ndio alikuwa amepigwa simu. Ndio akanipigia simu yeye mwenyewe.
Hii ripoti ya kwanza ilikuwa imesema ati alifariki mwezi wa 8 tarehe 22. Na ripoti ya pili kasema tena alikufa miezi 4 nyuma sasa ya mwezi wa 10. Lakini ripoti yenyewe sasa ya kutoka hospitali kwenye alikufia ilisema alikufa mwezi wa 3 tarehe 6. Siku yenye simu yake ilipima.
According to the agency that had recruited her to the domestic job, Ruguru quit her job and reportedly started working for another employer under terms unknown to them, distancing themselves from her for alleged breach of contract.
Alikuwa ameandika hapo yeye ni mtu wa kutoroka mahali alikuwa anafanya kazi. So wakaniambia sasa hata agent hiyo hawezi kubali juu yeye alitoka mahali alipelekwa.
However, the family has called on the government to be more proactive in safeguarding the welfare of its citizens in the Gulf countries, where dozens of suspected deaths of Kenyan women are reported every year. Chichi Josephine, TV 47.
Oh, that's quite unfortunate. Now, more women and girls are prone to rights violation today more than they were over a decade ago. This is according to Plan International's recent report dubbed Equal Power Now, and Girls, Young Women and Political Participation, released on the 10th of October in commemoration of International Day of the Girl. And according to the report, combination of factors including the COVID-19 pandemic, climate crisis and conflict have profoundly set back the progress on girls' rights.
Various stakeholders across the country joined the rest of the world in marking the International Day of the Girl Child. This year's theme being, "Our time is now, our rights, our future." In Nairobi County, stakeholders in the girls' rights space released a report revealing that girls' rights gains over the past decade have been slow, fragile and unequal. According to the report, more women and girls are prone to rights violations today more than they were over a decade ago.
Across 144 countries in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, not one country yet has achieved gender equality. Not one country. There's many who've moved, but no country can yet say they've achieved it according to the benchmarks that they agreed. As of 2020, more than 3 billion girls and women still live in countries with poor or very poor scores for gender equality.
In Baringo County, cases of rape, early marriages and female genital mutilation are still being recorded, with the county revealing that at least 6 out of every 10 girls are sexually violated, with the cases being solved at home.
Unfortunately, defilement cases have continued to go on, and as national government and also as the public, we all know that it's illegal, it's been outlawed. Kangaroo courts should not happen when it comes to young girls being defiled by men. Those local arrangements are not allowed. And we are collaborating with chiefs up to the assistant chiefs and the Nyumba Kumi elders to ensure that such cases go reported. And whoever is found culpable will be dealt with according to the law.
In Bungoma County, parents were urged to invest in their girls' education by providing necessities such as sanitary towels that are a leading cause for school dropouts among teenage girls.
Wasichana wapewe kipaumbele, wasichana wasikizwe, wasichana wapewe nafasi so that they can also exploit their potential. Wasichana sana sana unapata wasichana wamepakwa, even young women are raped. And badala ya watu kuwahurumia, tena they blame them, wanaona makosa ilikuwa yao wenyewe. Na saa zingine ni sababu ya kazi ambayo wanafanya, maeneo ambayo wanakaa, na pengine hali vile iko. Kwa hivyo, wacha tutetee wasichana.
Finally, in Kajiado County, more than 100 girls rescued from the shackles of early marriage and FGM graduated with vocational skills such as sewing and bead making. Zainab Mohammed, T47.
And with county governors now unveiling their county executive committee members, Elgeyo Marakwet County Governor Wellesley Rotich has subjected the new CECs in signing a 2-year contract that will gauge their performance on whether they will be given contract extensions or not. Bungoma Governor and former Senate Speaker Kenneth Lusaka says in naming his cabinet, he will ensure, and he ensured that minorities and marginalized communities as well as gender balance has been given priority. And as Paul Kirubi tells us, the new county CECs will have to work hard in ensuring county governments are able to raise more revenue and continue with President Ruto's development agenda.
Some county governors have unveiled their cabinet lineup ahead of the heavy task awaiting them. Among them is aligning their county operations with President William Ruto's agenda and ensuring county governments are able to sustain themselves. Marakwet Governor Wesley Rotich has been forced to set the bar a notch higher by asking his ministers to first of all sign a 2-year performance contract before they are handed an extension in the 5-year period.
For these teams that are coming, they will be signing a 2-year term contract. If you don't perform, you actually go home and we get another person to come and work for us, so that we don't have people who will remain for 5 years and our community suffers.
Alphaios Tanui has been unveiled as the Minister for Finance and Economic Planning from Keyo South. The health docket will be led by Michael Kibiwot, also from Keyo South. Monica Jeptum Rotich from Marakwet West will be leading the public service, devolution, administration, communications, ICT and e-governance docket. Edwin Kibor from Marakwet East will be the Minister of Education and Technical Training, while Edwin Kibet Seroni from Marakwet West will handle agriculture, livestock and irrigation. In Bungoma County, the new governor and former Senate Speaker Kenneth Lusaka also unveiled his cabinet in what he termed as a list that has complied with the Constitution's principles of inclusivity, protection of the interest of the minorities and marginalized communities, as well as ensuring gender balance. This after consultations with party officials and the bigger Kenya Kwanza coalition leaders.
Do hereby nominate the following persons as members of the county executive. First is Dr. David Wamamili Wanyonyi from Webuye East. He holds a PhD, Department of Curriculum, Instructor, Master of Philosophy in Kiswahili, Postgraduate Diploma in Education, Bachelor of Arts, and A-Level. He goes to head the Ministry of Education and Vocational Training.
David Mamili Wanyonyi from Webuye East will be the new Education and Vocational Training Minister. Dr. Andrew Wekesa Wamalo from Kandui will be leading the Health and Sanitization Ministry, while Wekesa Douglas Asita from Bumula will be leading the Ministry of Lands, Urban Planning, Housing and Municipalities. Lusaka's Deputy Governor Jennifer Mbatiani will also double up as the minister in charge of investments, partnerships, resource mobilization, while working hand in hand with special programs. Paul Kirobi, TV47.
Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party leader Raila Odinga has criticized the current administration for what he says was making life harder for Kenyans. Raila, who attended the Bunge la Mwananchi open session at the Jivanjee Gardens, said the price of fuel will this week hit a record high. He was accompanied by Langata Member of Parliament Felix Odiwuor and his Embakasi East counterpart Babu Owino. Michael with the details.
Speaking on Tuesday during a meeting at Jivanjee Gardens where he had a date with Bunge la Mwananchi, Raila faulted the current regime of President William Ruto for lifting subsidies.
Wiki hii bei ya mafuta itapanda tena. Naona pale ambayo wao wataenda sasa. Lakini Wakenya mpaka waangalie mbele. Mimi na hakika ya kwamba ile spirit ya Wakenya ya kupigania dhidi ya hilo tawala ya kidhuluma na kimabavu ya Nyayo itaendelea kudumu ili Wakenya waweze kujikomboa.
The former Prime Minister insisting that those who allegedly stole his victory would one day pay for their sins.
Hawa wezi ambao walijaribu kuiba ushindi wetu, siku zao ziko. Kila mwezi eko na siku yake. Sivyo? Siku ya 40 zinakuja. Zinakuja. Siku hii ikifika nyinyi mtaona tu.
While blaming Ruto's administration for what he said was making life unbearable for Kenyans, the ODM leader defended former President Uhuru Kenyatta on subsidies.
Walisema wanataka siku 100. Kwa sababu tumesema tuwacheze wao siku yao 100 ifike. Tuone yale ambayo wataweza kufanya. Sisi tulisema tutarudisha gharama chini. Walikuwa na kila mara wanalaumu Uhuru. Ati Uhuru amefanya hivi iko juu nini? Lakini Uhuru alikuwa anafanya yale ambayo yanafanyika katika ulimwengu mzima.
Raila said that President William Ruto had promised to lower the cost of fuel, but instead it has gone up.
Walisema tio bei ya mafuta petroli itarudi chini. Imeenda wapi? Walisema watatoa ile inaitwa Hustler Fund. Hii Hustler Fund imeonekana. Ile ya wakina mama imeonekana. Ajira imeonekana. Sasa wanazidi kutoa mengine. Juzi uliona yule naibu rais anasema ati sasa ni wakati yetu ya kukula. Wale ambao hawakutupiga sisi kura wakae kando.
This is after Ruto removed the fuel subsidy in September, leading to a litre of petrol retailing at 179 shillings, up from 159 shillings, representing a 12% increase. The former premier was accompanied by Langata MP Felix Odiwuor and his Embakasi East counterpart Babu Owino.
Tumeona bei ya mafuta imeenda juu. Uki increase bei ya mafuta, una increase bei via bidhaa zote ambazo ziko hapa nchini. Inamaanisha kila kitu itaenda juu na the cost of living inaenda juu. Kwa hivyo nyinyi kama wanabunge na Wakenya wote msikubali hii humiliation. Hiyo ni sawa? You must put on the spirit of a revolutionary.
Waliambia mahasolas kwamba shida zao zinaletwa na dynasty. Sasa waliingia. Mahasolas shida zao zimeisha kweli? Hazijaisha. Zimeisha ama zimeongezeka? Kuna wale wamepewa wheelbarrow hapa. Si walisema wakiingia watakuwa wanapeana wheelbarrow. Mahasola wamepewa wheelbarrow. Bado. Sisi tumewapea hizo siku 100. Tumenyamaza, msifikirie sisi ni wajinga.
Mike Kagwongo, TV 47, Nairobi.
And a report by Kenya Kwanza proposing names of members of parliament who will chair various committees and house committees in the National Assembly has raised a storm after Nyeri woman representative Rahab Mukami protested her placement as the chair of the House Welfare Committee, saying Nyeri deserves a better slot. Now, Mukami's protest comes ahead of a crucial Kenya Kwanza Parliamentary Group meeting this week to agree on the nominees before they are approved by the House. Ruto's allies have already reaped big after getting nominated to chair key departmental committees.
Ahead of a crucial parliamentary group meeting to agree on names of proposed chairs to various departmental committees, President William Ruto will have to face a section of his allies from the Mount Kenya region, unsatisfied by a report proposing his key allies to chair House committees in the National Assembly. Second-term Nyeri woman representative Rahab Mukami protested the decision to allocate her members' Welfare and Facilities Committee chairperson slot, saying it's not commensurate with the support Nyeri gave President William Ruto in the August 9 general election.
I'm being offered the chair Welfare Committee. I didn't take it kindly, and I don't think I'm ready for that because Nyeri deserves better. You know, as we delivered. Nyeri, we delivered. And you remember, I fought so much.
Mukami's protest comes after the National Assembly approved the House Business Committee, setting the stage for the formation of the Committee on Appointments, which will vet cabinet secretaries, and the Committee on Delegated Legislation, tasked with selecting members of the various departmental committees.
Initially, I was fighting for Parliamentary Service Commission. And the President himself, he had promised me that seat. Because when I was fighting for that position, I was alone. Everybody else was going for governor's seat.
Apart from the House Business Committee, Ruto's allies have reaped big in other committees, with Kiharu MP Ndindi Nyoro expected to chair the Budget and Appropriations Committee, Kimilili MP Didimas Barasa to chair Transport and Infrastructure Committee, Molo MP Kimani Kuria to chair Finance Committee, Narok West MP Gabriel Tongoyo to chair Administration and National Security, Kwanza MP Ferdinand Wanyonyi to chair Agriculture Committee, Belgut MP Nelson Koech will chair the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee, and Ndebezi MP Robert Pukose to chair Health Committee, while Embakasi North MP James Mwangi Gakuya will chair Trade, Industry and Cooperatives Committee, among other members.
Telling us that because we were given Deputy President, now we should not get CSCs, we should not get Parliamentary Service Commission. And remember, it was only me and the Deputy President in Nyeri. And that is why we are seeing the members who have come back, all of them are new. So I am like, okay, good, we have the Deputy President, but he's in the executive. Nyeri County need to be represented in Parliament.
On Tuesday, Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka called for vigilance from Azimio MPs in House committees to check on the executive, while declaring they will move to court to challenge National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetang'ula ruling, declaring Kenya Kwanza as a majority party. Apul Kamau, TV 47.
Now, President William Ruto has revealed his plan that he will seize small-scale traders at the Nairobi Stock Exchange, NSC, and subsequently enhance their ability to save. Now, speaking during the launch of the NSC marketplace in Nairobi, the head of state underscored the importance of the stock market to his ambition of making Kenya self-reliant.
President William Ruto has drummed up support for his saving culture narrative in the country as he urged border operators and mama mbogas to invest with the Nairobi Stocks Exchange NSE. The head of state had earlier on launched a national savings program where for every 2 shillings saved with NSSF, the government would contribute a shilling amounting to up to 3,000 shillings annually.
The small people are not doing well. You know, they are getting 2%, 1%. For the money they save in our banks. I think it's only fair that we begin the journey to even our returns.
Speaking on Tuesday at the NSE offices in Westlands, Nairobi, President Ruto said the listing of 10 more companies to NSE would present an opportunity for more Kenyans to hold shares and improve their economic well-being. Even as the government aims at expanding the composition of Nairobi Securities Exchange, the president is projecting to list up to 10 state-owned corporations on the NSE within the first year of his administration, either by repealing the privatization law that has hampered the process of listing state-owned corporations or amending it.
That the growth of the capital market has to be a shared agenda of my government and the private sector.
On his part, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua reiterated the president's message on easing barriers hindering the growth of capital markets.
To do whatever it takes, to do away with the bureaucracy and red tape to facilitate and support investment.
And the ringing of the bells.
Ruto spoke at the launch of the NSE marketplace in Nairobi, noting that the government will support companies looking to be listed on the stock market. Through the program, NSE aims to create investment opportunities for the world and attract foreign direct investment into the country.
At the moment, 65% of all the funds trading in our market are foreign funds, and 35% are local funds.
I think the most significant thing is the power of a stock exchange to raise capital.
President Ruto's visit to the NSE was the first by a sitting head of state since the era of late former President Moi Kibaki. Flora Limuki, TV 47.
Thank you, Flora, for that very last story that we picked this morning as we shift gears to the very important conversation. I mean, technically looking at the formation of the House and the committees that are set. Also, we ask whether the opposition is now systems go 30 days into President William Ruto's government. I mean, honeymoon is over, as they would say. Very, very important that we get to have, answers and questions of accountability. And Kenyans indeed have started asking these candid questions, as the government would have earlier started by telling us that, it will be tough the first times, but they would want to guarantee us that it will turn out to be rosy in future. But just how soon? Joining me for this very important conversation is Honorable Titus Lote, Member of Parliament, Kachiliba. I should have started by the gentleman on the ages, so at least it makes more sense. So we'll start with Honorable James Kekuya on my farthest right, Member of Parliament, Embakasi North. Mheshimiwa, karibu sana.
Thank you.
It's good to have you. Should I say congratulations?
Leader, yes, this is just a proposal, but I am sure that in fact things will work, because what matters in the floor of the House is that support.
And so you're positive that you're going to get that support?
As much as this list will be tabled on the floor, I'm sure it's the light of the day.
But then again, we ask questions as to just how important are these committees and various committees. And we all understand that even in a government setup, I remember we're talking about the cabinet secretaries and the positions that are said. There are those ones that are considered to be lucrative. There are those ones that are considered to be just normal, positions of ministries. And so we'll get to understand some more as to the committees in the House and just how important specific ones are, as you have seen Nyeri woman representative crying foul as to the position that she's been given, and says that Nyeri deserves better. But before we get to that, once again, Honorable Titus Lote, Member of Parliament, Kachiliba, thank you so much for creating time.
Thank you.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
This is your first time here, and it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And we also have a former Member of Parliament of Gishugu, Honorable Dr. Njogu Barua. Mheshimiwa, good morning.
Good morning.
You've been well?
Very well indeed, and thanks for having me.
Karibu sana, it's a pleasure to have you. Geshugu is all well?
It's all well indeed, yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, as per this morning, I've just come from there.
All right, that's good. And I mean, someone was telling me how the roads are clear from these areas to Nairobi, as opposed to within Nairobi itself. That if someone is within Nairobi, they delay to get to studio. Contrary to those ones that are coming from, say, home from Nyeri, which is like 2 hours to Nairobi.
It takes longer to move from Ngara to move from Muthaiga to the town center than to move from Sagana to Muthaiga.
It's quite unfortunate.
It's quite unfortunate. In fact, when the dual carriage is complete, it will be like a short distance.
Well, we're looking forward to that. Yeah.
Things are working.
Mheshimiwa, what is changing? And I mean, I'm asking you this because, first of all, I know you are a member of parliament of a constituency in Nairobi. But above everything, the fact that you have been here in Nairobi for the longest time, I know the questions of drainage, the questions of traffic, you know, these ones we have had, you know, troubles with for the longest of time. And even with the coming in of the superhighway and a couple of roads that have been well done, there was that hope that maybe we will not be talking about traffic jam anymore. But look at us today. The situation gets dire.
Let me just allude myself to that particular aspect, and I would like to say, one, Kenya is growing very rapidly in terms of motor industry, and you realize that in fact every other single Kenyan, when he feels that he wants to become somebody, actually the first item he thinks about is a motor vehicle, whether it's a personal car or whether it's a business motor vehicle. And I believe that that appetite, you cannot be able to stop people to spend their money, because it is their prerogative to decide what priorities they suggest to give the first priority. And I realize that the reason why the vehicles has rapidly increased is that there was an incentive of import of these second-hand motors, and you can see they have rated here as if Dubai is here. That number of magnitude of vehicles give also pressure to our already infrastructure in place, and I think it's a major headache. But I think it's a challenge that it has taken long for us to be able to need it. I still believe that various ways to decongest the city has been put in place, but they have not been successful at all. I still believe that the reason why we can be able to improve in this particular area is when we shall opt to leave most of our personal cars back home and try to use these other public service vehicles. That is what we have seen in most of the developed cities of the world. That you see people opting even to use motorbikes or bicycles to get to work, other than having option of personal cars. Because you see, when the jam comes, you realize that most of our roads from where the vehicles are approaching the city, you realize you are, instead of having wider roads to enter the city, the roads are quite close, and you realize if you have 4 lanes, as you approach the city, then the lanes are becoming either 2 or 3, and therefore automatically at some edge you must realize there is a slow pace of that traffic, and therefore, especially just one single case of Thika Road. Thika Road, once you approach from Thika Road, the jam starts from what we call group cinema, because as the vehicles approach the group cinema, then there is an automatic jam, because there were buildings that were left there during when that particular road was built, and actually it has been a headache, and that headache will ever be there unless those houses are being compensated and demolished to clear a wider road to enter the city. Otherwise, the way it is and the way it is designed, that problem will ever be there. Because vehicles are coming in a huge, so when this narrow at one point, that narrow gets back to almost a kilometer, 2 kilometers, and so on. Right. And that is how this kind of menace is.
I mean, do we lose hope in that case? Because when we look up to our leaders...
Leader, I think option has to be in place. That's why we need what we call railway, those public service railways.
Yeah.
And I think we should have to look at those options in a bigger way, because there are also options. But this option tells you railway lines, which are public service railways, and buses are the key things to put us out of this mess. But there, people must having what we call wheel fast to leave these small vehicles back home.
Yeah. All right, Mheshimiwa, that to imagine that people are going to leave their vehicles home is absurd, because you realize that a family of 5 and everyone will come out with their very own vehicle headed to town, you know, and it's a family. Perhaps they could use one car and decide that in the evening then we'll pick each other, and we do not have to, you know, clog the roads with our cars. But that aside, there's one Kalimo Jen who's also watching this morning and says, shift gears a bit and, you know, let's speak about our very own made vehicles. And she highlights Mobius, and I think you have probably seen Mobius. That is technically hugely homemade. And she says there's no member of parliament who's ever been seen by, you know, I mean, using a Mobius. What will it take for them to speak of this question of, you know, manufacturing and making sure that they consume our very own, because it's pretty much a nice car, maybe so to speak. But then we'll always go out there to, you know, export and get cars from different entities, from different countries. How do we grow then as a nation?
Well, thank you, Linda. I think I want to delve into this discussion. First of all, just to discuss a little bit about the topic that my colleague has just talked about in terms of the traffic of Nairobi. I think personally, I'll actually say it is the failure of planning and the failure of government that we are having traffic jams. Because if you cannot leave your vehicle at home when you do not have alternative means of transport that is affordable, that is convenient. You've used matatus and you know what matatus can do. You cannot come to studio trusting a matatu, because they will drop you anywhere they want. They drop you in the middle of Thika Road, and so you cannot trust it.
Right.
Until government come up with a plan on how to transport people through a mass transit, people will never leave their vehicles at home, because one, the matatu is a shambolic kind of an industry where there's a lot of abuse, there's a lot of undercuttings. So for me, I think the traffic jam will continue only until the government decides to do a very rapid, just look at Tanzania, for example, look at Dar es Salaam, a country that we thought was actually behind Kenya in terms of many developments. They have a very good way of managing the transport. And actually, the public transport in Dar es Salaam is actually overtaking many of the public transports in this country. And you go to Rwanda. So I think it is a failure of government that we're going to have traffic. And if you look at matatus, for example, these are lawless, extremely lawless, including now the border, that are actually driving on the opposite side of the road, sometimes causing accidents, sometimes even causing the backlogs. Some of the times you go through Thika Road and you find somebody with a cart walking and all the vehicles 2 kilometers, and there's nobody who cares about that. And there are policemen everywhere collecting bribes. So for me, I think until the government decide to bring this to an end, we will always have traffic jam, irrespective of how many highways we're going to construct. Coming to Mobius, well, for me, I think I've actually looked at it and I admire this kind of a vehicle. And sometimes I don't even believe it's Kenyan made. And I don't think anybody wants to blame any member of parliament or even yourself for not driving a Mobius. Because one, first of all, we do not even know where they are. I think the marketing strategy of Mobius, even within the country, is not up to par. So we probably need to have them market this country. I've not seen Mobius being advertised even, for example, in a studio like this, to tell us where we can get it from. So we will be willing to actually get Mobius, but we will also be willing to get access to it quickly so that we can be able, if we want to buy a Toyota now, I can get a Toyota either at the village market, I can get a Toyota being sold by a friend, I can get a Toyota by going to Toyota Kenya. All these other vehicles, but Mobius, I think it is still a long way in terms of marketing, but it's a very good vehicle, and I encourage everybody else who can get access to it, please buy a Mobius.
And we're not trying to advertise Mobius, but I'll play the devil's advocate.
It's important to advertise.
I have hosted
our
them
local,
here before.
Yeah,
yes,
it's true.
I've hosted
local,
them
yeah.
here before, and so in that on such level, let's say that at least they have attempted to make themselves known. Emmanuel is saying, we don't even advertise the likes of Benzes and this Toyotas and all that. But yes, that really shouldn't be the main point of argument. And also,
one thing.
Yes.
We have at least an issue of a kind, because you realize that in fact Kenyans does not, most of them, and including myself, actually we opt to go the imports way, other than embracing our local or domestic made. You realize that in fact here locally, even though you carry people with very good products, people just move to China, but and surely, if you compare our products with the China product, they are totally different. We have qualities, but actually those guys only what it has is that they have what we call things that actually are being made just to pull your eyes. But actually the qualities are totally poor. You can't compare. But Kenyans just want to see Alebo Lairad, Alebo Ingrid, Alebo elsewhere, but Alebo Kenya, actually,
it doesn't sound like it's a good deal.
Actually, we need also to put the country, to love our country and embrace to build our country, and also embrace to go domestic way.
Well, what is the possibility of that with a Ruto presidency? And again, in arguments to what it is that Honorable Lute speaks of the matatus. Again, we're reminded that a majority of these matatus really are owned by the leaders of this country, are owned by, men of uniform. And therefore, you can imagine how the conversation of scrapping them off, or at least reducing them, then would be. On instances, or on several instances, you see them, misbehaving on the roads. But then again, in a minute, they are, of course, apprehended. Before you know it, they're out. Simply because then, he near both flani na flani, and therefore, there's no way you can say a thing about it. Are we just moving in circles? Are we playing a game that really would never be successful on?
Thank you for that question, and I would like first of all to associate myself with the sentiments of my two colleagues here, although not fully, because I want to disagree a bit with what Mheshimiwa Gakuya is saying about the attitude of Kenyans towards local products. I am of the opinion that the products manufactured by Kenya in various spheres have not become very competitive or globally competitive in terms of quality. And that's why you see equipment or materials generated in Kenya do not find their way in China. But good from China find their way in Kenya because of that comparative advantage. So what I mean in terms of quality and otherwise, what I would like to say is that I'm lucky to have him here because he's going to be the next chairman of Trade Committee. And that docket is going to be really going to have that docket is going to have that serious input in value, quality and value addition of our products. In terms of transport, I think nature abhors a vacuum, and various cities in the world have been mentioned, and also I'm lucky to have traveled quite extensively globally and otherwise. And if you look at some cities like New York City, they still have traffic jam. And but there are lanes specifically assigned for public transport.
Okay.
So somebody who wants to go to work on time can do it through public transport. So public transport in those cities becomes a transport means of choice. So you don't have to be stuck in a traffic jam because of you can't use your personal car. So what I'm saying here is that we cannot just wish away matatus for now. But how you can get rid of matatus is by offering a competitive and reliable alternative. I remember sometimes when you were young, we used to have a bus, Kenya bus, which was very reliable. You could get one from Kangemi all the way to Eastlands, and you knew what time it was there. People were using public transport. You look at the cities like London, Brussels, and so forth, they are what you call trams. And we have what you have BRT, bus rapid transport systems, whereby they are very reliable, they are very safe, secure, and you can time yourself. If you want to be in town by 8:15, you know which bus to take. So unless we have a reliable transport system, we are going to continue having this type of problems with matatus. In terms of ownership, it does not matter who owns matatus at that particular time. Because if the people of Kenya will be able to get alternatives to take them to work, taking a matatu will not be a matter of choice. And so the matatus get away of the system on their own.
Yeah.
In terms of family, it's very difficult for us to, as a family of 5, to be one car, because maybe I've got various destination of work, various itineraries, so it becomes very inconvenient. But if you have got a reliable network, a transport system network, everybody can use that one, and this country can grow.
Right.
You see also, when you have a lot of jams like Globe Cinema is talking about, there's a lot of emissions into the air, carbon dioxide, methane, and so forth, and that sort of contributes to greenhouse gases and climate change and global warming. So it is not advantageous for us to have those vehicles. The government has to get a way of getting those matatus out of the way in a dignified manner and substituting them with a reliable, affordable, and dependable transport system.
Well put. Okay, well, that was, I wouldn't want to call it a by the way, because it's also a very, very important matter that needs to be addressed with the urgency that then it deserves. Honorable Titus, and let's speak about the committees in the houses and just how important they are when a member of parliament speaks of another that has been accorded to them to say that, you know, our region would have deserved better, you know, that as a people of Nyeri would have been accorded a better committee. Then we ask ourselves, just which one is this that is better than the other in the aspect of, you know, how business is conducted at the level of the House, and how instrumental is it about the question of money, the funding, or just what exactly? But allow us to take a quick short break and then come back on that very note.
The home of untold stories. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza
of Welfare Committee saying that Nyeri deserves better. Just which one is this that is better than this very Welfare Committee?
Thank you, Linda. I think before the 2010 Constitution, we did not have a lot of jostling for the House Business Committees, because the business of government was actually transacted even in Parliament by the members of Parliament who were then the cabinet, the ministers at that time. After the Constitution 2010 and implementation starting 2013, the members of Parliament were not allowed to become cabinet secretaries.
Right.
And so the cabinet secretaries were coming from outside the members of Parliament. And so the people that represented the cabinet secretaries in Parliament are actually the committees. And so actually, if you look at a committee chair, that person actually is like the cabinet secretary in Parliament. And so the reason why people are actually jostling for it. So it's a question of resources and a question of influence, because the chairman of committees have a lot of influence. So if Maigakuya, the friend Maigakuya here, is becoming the chairman of trade, this is the minister of trade in Parliament.
Okay.
And so I'm privileged to sit close to a minister here.
And I mean, that's why we started by asking him, should we now start celebrating as early as now?
And the reason why people are actually jostling for this. And we know, even in cabinet positions, there are cabinet secretaries that are more powerful and others, depending on the dockets.
Yeah.
And so the reason why members of Parliament are jostling for some positions and not others. And if you go to defense, if you go to internal security, if you go to National Treasury, those seems to be more powerful cabinet secretaries. And so the reason why you can see members of Parliament jostling for this. And I'll tell you, I'll say there is a different ballgame. But inside Parliament, it's a big deal. It's a big deal for all parliamentarians, including which kind of a committee you're going to go into.
Right.
And so for me, I think I have a lot of respect for the women rep for Nyeri. But I will also want to ask the women rep for Nyeri and also the people of Central Kenya to consider how Kenya Kwanza government has been formed.
Yeah.
36%
has gone to Central.
Has gone to Central,
yes,
including the deputy president. And so they should also think about others that got nothing completely, even after voting Kenya Kwanza.
Yeah.
And so they should not just say everything should be coming to Nyeri or to Central Kenya. They should also consider some regions that voted to the man and got nothing, absolutely, in committees, in CSS, in PSS, and everything else. Yeah, so it is important.
You know, when you are in Parliament, you are a representative of your people first before it gets to a level where you're speaking about you. I mean, Kenya at large, yeah? And maybe that's the reason why then they speak of Nyeri deserves better or this region deserves better. On several occasions, you've heard people asking, will Gachagua then be the person to unite the Kikuyus? Will Honorable Gachagua then be the kingpin of a central region? Is it going to be, you know, the president, that is William Ruto, that really holds the glue of these people of the Kalenjin community together? And so could be justified that she speaks of her region to be one region that could have been given better?
I think you can look at that issue from two sides. First of all, from a point of benefit to herself as a person. I mean, let's call her spend a spend. And benefit the people she represents. And those are the people of Nyeri. Even before you got the people of Mount Kenya.
Right.
Where I come from Mount Kenya as well. And I don't think I've heard the representations of some of the members of Parliament from that region.
Yeah.
So saying that you are being appointed to represent Nyeri people is really an issue that is debatable.
Okay.
The other thing I can say is that in leadership, there are two types of leaders. There are some leaders who are given status by the office, and there are some leaders who give the office a status. For example, Gakuya is my witness. Before Kibaki appointed John Michuki as Minister for Environment, that ministry was seen as a weak ministry.
Right.
But when Michuki was moved from Interior to Environment, he raised the status of that ministry.
Yeah.
People know much about it. Now he's taken as one of the key ministries in the government because Michu gave the office the status.
And so is it about a person and how they handle this office?
So what I'm saying is that Mukami is a chairman of the House Welfare Committee. She is in the House Management Committee.
Yes.
She's in the House Leadership Committee. She has all the opportunities to make her contribution through that forum. So what I can say is that she should just accept that position and give it its best, and through that position make a serious contribution, if she has any, to the leadership of the National Assembly and the country as a whole.
Okay.
I also would like to say that in terms of committees, what she should be saying is that committees are actually mapped on ministries. So like what Gakuya will be heading the Parliament, will be oversighting, will be leading the oversight, the Ministry of Trade, Cooperatives and I think it's enterprise development, something like that. So there are some ministries with more parastatals, bigger budgets.
Okay.
And the bigger the budgets, the bigger the opportunities. Maybe that's what she is actually trying to refer indirectly.
Right.
Finally, I like to say that in Mount Kenya and in Nyeri in particular, we have the deputy president, who is quite an influential person in this country. In fact, he's second in power. So I concur with my friends that it's high time also, we also gave opportunities to other people to get some leadership position of significance, as opposed to putting all the positions in one region.
Okay.
When you look at Mount Kenya, we don't look at the Honorable His Excellency Gachagua basically is the Vice President for Nyeri. Deputy President for Nyeri is a Deputy President for Kenya, but for Mount Kenya region.
Right.
So the entire Mount Kenya region will be able to feel his impact because people are looking upon him.
Yeah.
When you look to Rift Valley and you ask whether President William Ruto is going to put the people of Rift Valley together, I can say yes. He's going to do it because he has done it. When you come to Mount Kenya, these elections are a bit interesting because as for Mount Kenya, we cannot say that we looked for votes for Deputy President. Yes, we did, but to a smaller extent. The Deputy President worked for his votes by going to the villages. So to get a kingpin, it will take some time.
Right.
So what I'm saying is Honorable Rigathi is a leader of substance, but he needs to work a bit harder to entrench himself to the Kikuyu people as a kingpin of Mount Kenya, which carries about 11 counties and so forth.
And so it's in order to say that for this very moment, the kingpin of the mountain is the president? That's what you're telling us?
I think what is happening is that I can say that William Ruto has been able to entrench himself as a kingpin for all communities. Because you go across Kenya, he's loved by people like him, and they are actually have a lot of hope in him. So when you go to Mount Kenya, so far, Ruto is still the kingpin. When you go to Rift Valley, he's the kingpin. When you go to other areas like coast, he's coming up slowly as a kingpin. And that's why I'm saying that if we are going to have a Mount Kenya kingpin, somebody must work harder to do that.
All right, that's interesting. Honorable Gakuya, just how significant is, the contribution of an individual in any docket that they are placed in, and including this conversation of kingpins that, for Rigathi Gachagua, yes, he's the deputy president of the country, and perhaps, a leader from Central Region that occupies one of the biggest or the highest positions in comparison to all others. But as Honorable Njogu would say, he still has a long way to go to appease to the people of the mountain, to position himself as the person who speaks on behalf of the mountain. And so this speaks to the significance of an individual in any position. If we are to speak about the woman representative of Nyeri and the docket that has been accorded to her, what is supposed to be done to make sure that, she raises the profile of this docket so that in future it is not looked at as, a minor docket. It is not looked at as just any other docket in comparison to the others. What is the significance of having Honorable Musalia Mudavadi in this docket that has been accorded to him, playing a key role to raise that profile, to make sure that, yes, his contribution then is felt?
Leader, my take on that is that every single docket depends on the individual person who occupies that position. Because you can be able to make that position seen as a working position. But if at least you start by, even before assuming to that position, you assume by, yes, this is a rejected position, why should I? Because one thing is that, in fact, every chair earns equivalent to any other chair as much as is a chair of a committee, whether it's a departmental or whether it is those other oversight committees. And I can tell you for sure, positions, it is those individuals who makes that particular position seen as a strong position. You can be elected a president of a republic, but you fail to showcase that actually you are the one sitting on that particular chair. It is your individual capacity that will be able to enable that particular position seen as a good looking and enforceable position, because the enforcer is you as an individual.
Yeah.
And I can tell you for sure, leader, there is no bad committee as much as it has a duty to do. And every other committee, it's only that, in fact, we would argue to say that, in fact, maybe these audit committees does not have budgets aside because they are not departmental. But at the end of the day, if it is issue to do with earnings are equal.
Yeah.
The membership of that committee earns equivalent to any other member that actually lies from any other committee. And I can tell you, whom shall we be giving out those committees to if we all demand to say we must get this and I must get this.
Right.
So I think at some time there is what we call give and take. As my panelists has argued, that consideration maybe, and the reason why maybe my good colleague has found herself is maybe because of the intricacies of that kind of Kenya Kwanza formation. We realize that yes, we have many affiliates. Those affiliates, we have seen them, most of them getting a single slot of a cabinet minister. And actually, you get satisfied at that level because probably you brought in maybe 2 members of parliament, or maybe a single member of parliament. But you cannot demand to get more when there was somebody also who did very good, that actually he brought in table a significant kind of number that actually you find that you almost brought half of the government on the table. And that's how you realize during the sharing of the slot, the Mount Kenya found themselves with 7 number of cabinet ministers.
Yes.
And that is a payback. I would say it's a reward. And that reward, I can say it was necessary because it depends on what they brought on the table.
On the table.
Yes.
Well,
And,
interesting. Mount Kenya then will always be having these top positions because they are advantaged by their numbers. And so when we talk about what it is that they bring on the table, then most of the times you realize that they will come with lots of numbers. And in this case, then they'll carry the day. Will that push us to a conversation where we start asking then what is left of the other regions? And will it be even before level, you've had those ones that speak of, we've had Kalenjin, Kikuyu presidency, what happens to the rest of the nation. But of course, that water under the bridge, because we are in that space where we want to see the government serving the people. This question of rewarding loyalty, does it sit well with you, Honorable Lote? Because you realize that then there's been a lot of disgruntlement, first of all, as to the PS's positions that we're talking about and the list that was incorporated, the 108 that were added to the list that was there originally. And Kenyans are asking if at this very early stage we start seeing such cases, then what happens even to the fight of corruption or on corruption as it should be?
Well, I think politics is about numbers.
Okay.
World over. And you cannot assume where you get your numbers. If you do that, then you are walking yourself to the political grave.
Okay.
So for me, I think any politician do not have an option but reward the loyalists. You have to, so that you can also continue. And especially during your first time, like His Excellency, His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, the President, he will need to reward the loyalists. And I think all of us here, sitting here, politicians, we know that there's a principle in politics. You cannot actually say you are getting votes from Mount Kenya and then you are giving all the positions or very little positions to them and give more positions where you did not get your votes from, because that is political suicide. I think what we need to do is a little bit of a balance, because at the end of it all, even when you get your votes from Mount Kenya or whatever region you're coming from, you need to also consider those others that are little in terms of numbers. And even the Bible says that even whatever you do to this list of my brothers, you are also doing it unto me. So sometimes you also need to go beyond looking at political consideration to looking at what even God says. Do it to the little of my brothers, and you're doing it unto God. So do not let other regions lag behind, because you know what? 7 cabinet positions are going to one region. Let's not lie to ourselves. these cabinet positions are going to influence decisions that are going to that particular region. We are Kenyans and we know that. I cannot come from Mount Kenya and take all the roads to Nyanza. I have to ensure, because my people will ask me, you're a cabinet position, you have a cabinet position, what have you brought home?
Yeah.
And so 7 dockets in this country are actually going to invest resources mostly to one particular region. What about the other regions that do not have cabinet positions? And the reason why we've always have a high stake in terms of how do we form government, and the fact that then it comes with a lot of post-election violence, because you're seeing that you're losing out for the next 5 years, and so you have to probably act overtly. For me, I'll say it all depends on the president. The president has the influence of many people that voted for him, and they can listen to him, and he can be able to speak before them and say, well, you gave me the votes, I'll give you your share, but let's also consider the others that gave me their votes, but their votes were not well enough to count to give them anything. Because then, coming from the region where I come from, we actually voted, the constituents, the county come from, 109 votes, 9,000 votes voted for the president. Yeah. We got no cabinet position. We probably might not even get a PSS position because of the listing that has come out. And even that is also suspect, because PSS are actually public service positions. They're supposed to be advertised by the Public Service Board.
Which was done.
Which was done.
Yeah.
But politically, because if you look at it, there was the first listing.
Yes.
477 were shortlisted. And because there was an outcry, there was another 100 and something added. And if you hear properly what is being said, they say they have brought in other people that were not considered.
Right.
Who is this that considers? Because I thought public service is supposed to look at the qualifications of the people that applied. So what other consideration was done beyond the 477 that was looked at before? And if he listened very keenly to what the Deputy President said, and unfortunately, he said that we are going to reward the UDA, not even the Kenya Kwanza, UDA loyalists. What was he saying? He was actually trying to say, it is based on those positions that we're going to reward. So is it a public service exercise, or is it a political exercise that is shrouded into and hidden into the public service system?
Yeah. Yeah. And a big question there you go, Honorable Njogu. It is that moment of saying that, we do not leave out our friends. We have to reward loyalists. That's, technically what is playing out. But to a level of flouting the laws of the land, to a level of going against, the guidelines that have been set aboard as to picking individual for certain positions. And we would understand the cabinet, because we know that's the prerogative of the president, and therefore it is for him to decide who is supposed to be there. But we understand very well that as well, the PSS positions are advertised for, and Kenyans, 9,000 for that matter, presented their names. 400 were shortlisted, and then we have these others that are topped up to the list. You ask yourself, really, does it have to go to that level where it is political, or has it been political anyway? It's just that we blind ourselves with this thing that we're following the right
I think I would like, first of all, to make some input on before I come to that, on the issue of the distribution of cabinet positions. I think I would like to say that as we start now, we are 30 days into Ruto presidency. Today is the 30th day, I think. And William Ruto is starting a 5-year journey. After the 5 years, he's going to come back to the people and ask for another 5 years.
Yeah.
So that he can complete his 2 terms, and possibly he'll get it, depending on how he performed the first term and his team. So in terms of cabinet positions, I think the president must balance loyalty with competence. Because if you get some people who are loyal but incompetent, there'll be a problem in terms of performance of that government. But what I think, from where I see what the president is doing, first and foremost, he is on phase 1 of his administration, and that is meeting his campaign promises. He had some coalitions and parties, like Chama cha Kazi, this one of Mudavadi, Wetangula, Pa, and so forth. So the first thing I think he wants to do is to make sure that he meets it's part of the bargain. He promised them, if I become president, I'll give you this and this. He has already given them, and he's actually giving them as he said. So now the next phase is, I think the next phase will be will they perform to the expectation of the people? If they don't perform to the expectations of the people, then the president will be at liberty to move them around and get competence in his government and expect this one to happen before 2026 or 2025. So that now he not be bullied by Kenyans. Kenyans will say, okay, give Mr. X this job, but not do it well, and that's why he was.
But is that not more of a gamble, which is the last?
It's not a gamble,
right
but you
now,
see,
when you're inheriting a government, as you acknowledge that it really is on its knees.
I think the worst thing is that if you tell somebody, you remember the Raila Kibaki issue,
yes.
the MOU. That was the beginning of the problem.
Yeah.
So I think Ruto doesn't want to have the problem with the MOU. MOU type of a problem. He would like to meet his bargain, then within a short time review the situations and maybe put competence where it belongs. In terms of you talk about the permanent secretaries.
Yes.
There was a list which was the first list of short list was 477 people, and we as Kenyans thought that PSC, the Public Service Commission, had put all the considerations before coming up with those 477. And we didn't expect that there would be some sort of oversight, that we missed this, so you have to earn this number of people, 108 in particular. So what I can say is that the president cannot afford to get it wrong, as he starts, as you said, and we don't know what we have been noticed. But the issue which will arrive is, if more PSs will be picked from the 108 than the 477, then Kenyans will ask themselves, was it fair?
Yeah.
Was everybody given an equal chance of getting those positions? So people will start mistrusting that initiative. And so I believe that from where I sit, before releasing the list of 477, I think they should have consulted internally. If there was an anomaly, they fix internally before releasing to the public. So this releasing the 477, then adding another 108 is still questionable to the Kenyan people. And the outcome of who will be PS is eagerly awaiting, and they'll be discussed. If I was PSC myself, to avoid such a issue of people judging us, I would do the interviews in public.
Okay.
So that people can also be able to see if it is Mheshimiwa Akuyo is running for the PS, he was appointed because of competence. Because people are able to judge who is performing very well. But if they go the way they are going, there's going to be a lot of suspicion, and it's not going to go over very well. Finally, I would say that it's not good to go against the Constitution when you're doing your own things. Let's follow the Constitution to the letter. Like the president has said, he is going to be in government with his team, and he's going to give Kenya Kwanza, Azimio, ample time to oversight them and challenge them.
Right.
So I think what I would like to say is that let this government be open to criticism, so that people can be able to give positive criticism, which might help it to move forward.
And Raila is up already, as well as Kalonzo Musyoka, to criticize. But even before it gets to that, 30 days into his government.
Linda, I wanted you just to allow me a single.
Yes, sure.
I just wanted to intervene on what the panel has been alluding to. One thing I would like to remind Kenyans that actually it's only the proclamation of 2010 Constitution that actually changed our original setup of our cabinet. Remember there before, since independence, our cabinet has been always appointed from the parliament. Therefore, it tells you all the qualities of the cabinet ministers were in the house. And even today, we have every single quality that's needed to serve the cabinet positions in the house. It's only that the Constitution has given an option either to go outside or you can select from inside. But whoever you select from inside cannot sit in two positions, have to resign one and pick the other. And therefore, let us not feel or try to see or to find it as so much or so much in order, out of order, that we have a number of politicians in the face of the cabinet. Those cabinet members, I am sure, they are capable, and that is why there is a process to vet them. If one is being allowed to be found not capable, I don't think that actually the members of parliament can be coerced just to make sure that actually you have to appoint somebody without qualities of that particular position. And if there is a set criteria, if one passes that criteria, then we should totally get out those doubts. We must allow Kenyans to serve, and we must allow Kenyans to serve from either capacity.
Right.
Despite whether they are politicians or whether they are
technocrats, as they would call them.
Because
yes.
You can't tell me that if I am a doctor and a member of parliament, that I have shaped my profession because I have a title of honorable. It tells you that tomorrow I can serve as a cabinet, as a health minister.
Yes.
Yeah? Because I have the qualities to serve that. I have what we call accounts, finance, or other economic areas. I can still serve as a minister for finance. And so on. And these qualities, we have them even inside the house. So let us not keep on putting murky to members because they have been appointed from the house, because, or if they are politicians. But if does not have those qualities, let them be
disqualified at the point of voting.
That's my view.
All right, gentlemen, allow us to take a quick...
In the view of the extra number of PSs,
yes,
that the list was being extended,
adjusted upward.
I just want, most of the time we have errors. And probably that was an error.
Is it?
No, we have not heard
probably.
We have not heard from the PSC telling us exactly what was the omission.
Yes.
Yes. And even by considering that there was a top-up of more than 100 number, that always tells you that it is not the 50 we will require, because at the end of the day we need 50 number of them, or 49
after all,
out of the whole list. And if the number was even less than 50, then we could say these are the people purported to be taking the slot. But just imagine, even the
list that was accorded
was so much above 100.
It's double.
Yeah.
Okay, well, allow us to take a short break and then we come back to understanding the Ruto's government 30 days into it. And we ask whether now officially the opposition is up in arms after this break.
Untold stories. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday. Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga.
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m.
A break, Honorable Barua as well as Honorable Titus and Honorable Jimmy, as we expound some more on the activities that are playing in the country. And 30 days into Ruto's government, they say honeymoon is over. Mheshimiwa?
Yeah, well, honeymoon was supposed to be over from the first day.
Okay.
Because this country is actually on the rim. And I think the president had promised a lot, and the president had actually said within 100 days he will be able to do this much. Yeah. So far for me, I can actually say that this can be looked at into three ways. The first one is what he has been able to achieve within 30 days. For me, it's impressive.
Right.
The second one is what he has failed to achieve within the 30 days. And the third one is the expectations of Kenyans.
Yeah.
I think for me, I would actually say 30 days into office is a very short time, because that is the time you're forming government. You actually, even now, we do not have any cabinet secretary. Up to this particular time, we do not have any principal secretaries, or we have any formation of government. So he's still using the previous regime's system. And so for me, I do not expect him to perform much like he has done. For me, I cannot fault the president. I've actually seen him delivering on what he promised. He promised to actually appoint the judges. He has done that. He promised to return the port to Mombasa. He has done it. He promised to appoint women. A little bit of after the charter that was signed in Kasarani on June. No, not Kasarani, in Nya Stadium. He failed to perform because he actually had promised women in signing
50.
That he's going to get 50. But well, I cannot really say that was a crime, because as a country we need to gradually grow. He's met the constitutional threshold of 1/3. So for me, I can never say and ask women to forgive him, because this is his first term and he's also trying to learn. And so for me, I can say even that he actually has gotten. He promised that he's going to give the deputy president responsibilities. He has done that. So for me, I can actually say that within 30 days, even members of parliament, if members of parliament are asked to give their scorecard in 30 days, most of them will not even reach the threshold of what the deputy president, what the president, Dr. Ruto, has actually done. So for me, I can say he's performed, but there are places that he has also goofed a lot, and I think those are places that need to be corrected, because most of the things you can actually see today at the NSSF, he actually woke up and said, I want to increase the NSSF contribution. And you know, the constitution is very clear. Public participation is clear in any development in this country. People are supposed to be asked. And the reason why the courts have actually said, no, we are not going to take that. We're supposed to subject this to public participation. So you can actually see already the president is probably very ambitious. And because of his ambition, then he's just starting to do things that needed to have actually gone through consultation. He's actually removed the aspects of subsidies. Well, I know it is a long term that subsidies are supposed to be removed from consumption to production, so that we do not subsidize things that we are consuming, but we are subsidizing things that we're producing. But look at, for example, the fuel subsidies. If it was removed, fuel is a consumption, is a production product. Because if you remove subsidies from fuel, you've actually removed subsidies from all production, because even traveling goes
highly dependent.
Everything depends on fuel. So by removing fuel subsidies, it could have been a war that is beyond our imagination or our thinking, because we are told it is because few companies were benefiting that were from rich families. But was it trickling down to the people? Yes, it was, because now the cost of everything came down. Immediately the cost of the subsidies were removed. Everything else went up. And it will continue to be up until at a time when we actually think of other ways of managing our cost of energy in this country. So for me, I think that kind of removing of subsidies from fuel was good, but was not well thought, because it actually hits the mwananchi so hard. If before elections we were saying that unga is cheaper than sufuria, probably now unga is way expensive. It's cheaper than 2 sufurias, or probably now going towards 3 sufurias. So I think in terms of cost of living, we are actually seeing the cost of living going very high. The people expected, the border people, the ASLA, expected that the cost of living will come down. And in 30 days, people are disappointed. Yeah. I know it could be a short time. It could also be a long time. So let's not just assume that what we are told, what we are being told is the biblical truth. Yeah. It might continue for a long time. So for me, I'll actually say the president, in 30 days, he has actually performed. Okay. He's actually performed.
We have felt his presence.
We have felt his presence.
Yeah.
But despite the fact that some of his presence are actually negative in terms of the cost of living. And I think that is what the people are actually expecting. Priority. And for me, there is one thing that I would want the panelists here to address. There is a term called ASLA. It is very important that we actually start discussing about this term. Because people say ASLA economy. ASLA, nobody has actually put it in the context. So that if we've got the 50 billion shillings for the ASLA, who does it go to? Does it just go to the Mamamboga and Boda Boda rider? It would
be a big problem to establish.
We need to define what that hustler thing means, because people are just jumping into it. Next time, if you give to a billionaire money and you say this is a hustler, we actually as a country need to define, because now it becomes a national term that needs to go to the national dictionary, so that we are very critical and clear in terms of what this means. Later, if we do not define it now, I think it's going to come back to us when I start seeing myself having 5 matatus and I'm giving money and I'm called a hustler. We need to have it clear. We need to understand so that we know what this is, because that is where some of the monies are going into, and a lot of people are having a lot of expectation in terms of we're going to get money from the ASLA fund. Either we call it a ASLA as per the dictionary, and we know what dictionary means is not exactly totally what the political, it's totally different from what we are meaning. Yeah. But nobody has actually taken care to define it now that it is actually going into the budget of this country.
And that is going to be a big problem. I'll tell you that I'm also looking forward to the ASLA fund, you know, at this very level, because
are you not a member of the ASLA?
You tell me. You tell me. Am I now? That's exactly what it is that Mheshimiwa speaks of.
Don't you fit there? Yeah, I guess you fit there.
Thank you. So in this case, I'll get the hustler fund. You better push so I'm lucky enough to get the fund so I can set up a business and all that. But very, very important that we look into this matter, even as we speak of the 100 days. And yesterday, one of the papers, highlights this. It says, in rewarding of loyalty, in making sure that every other friends, are given, value for what it is that they put up during the campaign times. The hustler has been left out. And when we're talking about this, we're talking about the priorities, the high cost of living, the fact that today morning I have read a story of an individual who's passed on because of a question of starvation. I mean, in this time and age, that is the last thing you would expect for a nation, and a nation that is coming into a new phase of government, a government that promised that within this short period will have addressed these ones that bedevil you.
Yeah, thanks, Rita. I think it's interesting that my colleague is asking us to define the term hustler. Yeah. And that's thing which has been in my mind for some time now, and especially yesterday, because during the campaign, the term hustler was used extensively. Most of us were hustlers, and that's why the hustler movement got more votes. But it was interesting yesterday when His Excellency the President was the Nairobi Stock Exchange, and he defined, if you listened, he redefined the term hustler. And it was very interesting. Yeah. He said that hustler means nobody will be left behind. Okay. Did you hear that? Yeah. He said that nobody will be left behind. I heard that definition.
Yes.
And it was just interesting, and I thought the President now is now moving on to accommodate everybody. Right. By saying nobody should not be left behind. And when I compare this with what my friend and His Excellency the Deputy President been saying, that we are going to reward only our supporters, it shows that the two gentlemen may be already in terms of principles and approach, they are at a tangent. And they need to bring their thinking to a focus so they can take us the same direction. I think what I can say is that there was something which was called AGPO, and this means access to government procurement opportunities, which was meant for women, youth, and people with disabilities, such that companies which have AGBO certificates are not supposed to go through the legalized requirement of maybe have been there for 5 years and so forth. And there was an affirmative action, and it's still there, so they can access maybe 30% of government procurement opportunities, so that they can be able to lift them up. But what happened, that thing has been abused as you see it now. People like me and him and Gakuya, just an example, we have formed companies with 90% ownership by women. And these women are either our daughters, our wives, and such that. So now these opportunities are still going back to the people, Bwenyenyes of the day, through the back door. Right. So in terms of the Hustler Fund, it will be interesting to see how William Ruto and his government are going to have a fund which is going to be accessible to those who fit the real definition of hustler. Because I believe the simple problem we are having in this country is that the problem we set to address in 1963, the Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, was to fight poverty, ignorance, and disease. 60 years down the line, the current president and the outgoing president, and Mwai Kibaki and Moi, are still saying that they're going to fight poverty, ignorance, and disease. So what does it mean? It means that the Kenyan people have not achieved their basic needs. And when they have not achieved their basic needs, it means they have no space to address higher needs of the society. Because if you don't have food, you cannot think about that car, your toys are Mobius, or you can't think about a Mobius, you cannot think about a Mobius, you cannot think about Mercedes, you think about what you're going to eat today. That is why you saw somebody died of hunger. So the first priority for this government, or any government, is to address the basic needs level. If you have access to education, access to health, access to shelter, you'll be able to become a reasonable person. And that is why even the campaigns of 2022, it was basically about money. Give me 200, give me 300, because people want to address the needs which face them today. But if those needs were already achieved, now the Kenyan population would have moved to a higher level of development. And that is why we're stagnating. In terms of President William Ruto and his government, how they have performed in the last 30 days, I would personally comfortably give a very high pass for this government. I don't want to give a figure, but at least their performance to me is achieving 75% plus. Why do I say that? I say this because the president himself has been able to have his footprints all over. He started by having his international footprints, going to UK for the body of the Queen, and going to New York and addressing the General Assembly.
You think he's not overdoing it, as the likes of Babu would say?
No. He's addressed the General Assembly. So his presence in the global political sphere is there. He gave a very eloquent speech. So he has already asserted himself among the nations of the world. When you come to Kenya, he has been able to, first of all, he won majority of seats in the Senate. He has been able to take leadership of the National Assembly. Also the Council of Governors is chaired by the UDA loyalists. Recently, he was able to reorganize his inner team, the State House Controller, the Chief of Staff. He was able to nominate CSs for vetting by Parliament. That has been achieved. Regionally, the last step is regionally. He has been able to visit Kenya, Uganda. No, he has been to Uganda, Tanzania, and Ethiopia, which are the neighboring states. So he has a relationship with good relationship with the neighboring country. So in terms of domestic governance structures, they are almost in place. In terms of global acceptance, is already there. So what I can say is that he has achieved over 75%. But as my colleague says, there are some areas where I think they need to improve. First of all, the issue of public participation. I think this government should be able to, in my view, keep off from pronouncements without public participation, because they offend section of this community. One of them is the first pronouncement of the Shaba system by the Deputy President, when he announced in Rift Valley that they are going to revert the Shaba system. I'm not saying it's bad or good, but that should have been subjected to public participation. The other one is the GMO issue. The GMO, genetically modified organism issue, is a debate that has been going in this country for over 40 years. And people have got positions on those GMOs. I know the majority of Kenyans who are in the know are of the opinion that GMOs have, and I'm not taking the political side because I'm also a scientist, have got some negative health implications, so it could be long term. And I think before using the old cabinet to approve GMOs, and I think this cabinet is not motivated because it's not even been maintained, so I don't think they are putting their minds in it. You would have subjected the issue to a public participation. I remember somebody in Zambia, there was hunger like this at some times, and there was pressure for the president of Zambia to bring in GMOs. But what he said, and I heard it from TV the other day, is that, okay, we are going to bring GMOs in this country for the purpose of this current hunger. And we are going to have GMOs in the unga form. So the maize was milled elsewhere and brought in as unga. But this one of Kenya has gone a notch higher. We are bringing seeds and we are bringing food. Once you get seeds in our, when you get the GMO seed in our gene pool, they will be difficult to remove, even if you discover their negative implications. So what I'm saying is that before actions we will take in the future, I would just like to appeal to the government. Kenyans are listening people, subject things to public's participation, and you get what you want.
Well put.
When you are together, we win more.
Right.
In overall, I would like to say that the government has succeeded so far in 30 days, but I'm not going to close before I mention something I noticed of the weekend. The meeting in Washingishu, whereby there was a Thanksgiving, and I had people proposing the name of Farouk Kibet and saying it's a very good in organizing, kupanga even. And then when the president comes back for the same position, he appoints different people. So this guy is trying to pressurize the president to appoint a status controller who is favorable to them, or what? That's a question that's in people's mind, and I think I congratulate the president for staying firm and a different thing. And being on focus.
Farouk Kibet will be here. Farouk Kibet, we know that will be here. I mean, he's worked with the president for the longest time.
Yeah, I know him. He's my friend.
Loyalty, definitely. But I agree to what it is that
so there's an issue there.
An aspect of coercion. It should be left for the president.
The president to do what he wants to do. Thank you.
I agree. Mheshimiwa, someone was watching you yesterday and today as well, and they're asking me to ask you whether you can confidently and happily savour GMO food. You said no.
Really, Linda, let me say, it's only a situation of a serious threat. And especially in this particular case, I want to root myself into what we call a food security threat. That is the only way that you can be able to have such an option. And I think the head of state, taking considerations of the situation we are in, probably in his thought, he thought that yes, what can make this country progress in terms of the situation we are in? And let us not forget that even though we decriminalize these GMO, they are already in our markets. How they entered into a market is an idea I cannot be able to define here. But it is in the market already. And this exactly, Rida, even yourself, you have enjoyed yourself with the chickens, the roasted those chickens that are obviously in most of our caves in this city. And these roasted chickens are there over 10 years ago. And that tells you these GMOs are not new here. They entered in the market a long time ago. It's only that people probably does not understand these are GMO. But this is what they have been consuming. If you move to the market, you realize that you find that there is what we call kitunguu sumu. I realized one day that once I stepped in a certain market, and I was looking for these sungusumo. Then I bought them because they were so beautiful. But when I took them to home, then I asked myself, why? If it was in a bodeka, what is it? I came to realize, these are not the original. And I moved to the same green grocery market, and I asked the same seller, do you have the originals? Then he has an portion of the original, and then, but I still believe that once you move to China are the people who has the most selling commodities. Yeah. And it's the only place that you can have those counterfeits in big numbers. But you realize that then you cannot buy an item without having known what kind of an item you are buying. It is your option to buy. If you want to go to the original, they will tell you this is the original, but this is a copy. So it's your option. If you decide to take the copy, you just take the copy, but by knowing that this is not genuine material, is a copy. So that product, you are sure, right from there, you are just going to con people with, because you are sure it cannot be able to stand its quality. When you come to GMO, I would say yes. As much as this matter is a monster in our midst, how do we move ahead? I think I also want to I want to support the panel that Kenya is also required to have an option of or a say in this particular matter, because if we are having this GMO in our market, it tells you that actually there are farmers who actually have seedlings and who are just planting them. And if it is done, and it's done without the knowledge of the system, then something's wrong somewhere. Either we correct what is already in mess, or we legalize it with the terms. Because we may need to say, yes, if it is GMO, but we cannot just allow every dick and hell of GMOs to be in our market. We would say, what is now ailing us today? It is probably maize. How do we sort the issue of maize? So probably for a window of 3 months or 4, maybe we may say, yes, let us have a demisable of this commodity, but purposely for this particular threat we are in. But after that, we can save it out. Okay. That way, I think, is a way we can address it well. But if we permanently say we have adopted it, then I see a big problem. One is that maybe we are exporters of horticulture, and most of our horticulture got markets because they are original commodities. Okay. And therefore, that's why they got themselves markets outside. And probably if we get sunk into this GMO, then we may realize that also our export will have question. And we may realize that most of those export commodities are going to have queries, and most of the country who depends on them, because they are genuine ones, may be sad to say you have mixed your market, and therefore you will not be able to know what is GMO, whether it's GMO or whether it is the original product we have been buying. Therefore, there is what we call pro and against of this particular decision, and I still think that because it's not cast on a stone, the president is not so much aloof that he cannot be able to seek advice. Okay. And if Kenyans feels that actually it is so plaintive, I think it is something that he can be asked to consider.
Okay, well put. Opposition is out there. Yes, Mheshimiwa.
Well, I think as we talk about GMOs, right, I think let's think about this country more critically than just the food thing. Because the reason why probably we are bringing in the GMOs is so that we can solve the food crisis now. Yeah. Let's ask ourselves, the neighboring countries of Uganda and Tanzania, we used to get a lot of maize from them, and they still produce a lot of maize. The fact that we are not looking beyond the food could actually be driving us to our graves. One, think about all the maize seeds or seed company, not the maize seed, all the seed companies that we've got and the employment that they're employing unto the people. Immediately we introduce GMOs, we kill all those companies, we kill all those employment, we kill all those jobs. We're going to render a lot of people jobless. Think about the farmers that are producing maize seeds and these other kind of other seeds. We're going to render them all useless. We're going to render them all jobless. We're going to render them all economically disempowered. Think about our export, like he said. Immediately GMOs are coming in. Most of the developed countries are rejecting GMOs outrightly. So immediately they know we are producing GMOs. Even the coffee, the tea that we actually talk about as our export will also die. Think about the people that are going to lose all those jobs. Think about the cost of being managed by the companies that are producing the GMO seeds. Because unfortunately, unlike the bees and the birds and the flies that are actually doing cross-pollination on the normal natural products, GMOs are not pollinated by bees or anything. GMOs are actually produced in a lab. So basically meaning we are also going to render our farms useless. So the fact that we are saying, let us bring GMO for a short term and then we remove it, is a lie to itself. Because immediately we've got GMOs, we cannot remove them out of this country. And I think the president is trying to help Kenyans to get over the food insecurity. But he should think about himself being the Minister of Agriculture. He vehemently rejected GMOs, and the reasons have not changed. The reasons are the same. So I'm asking, let us critically consider these issues of GMO. Coming back to the issue of the president in 30 days, I want to bring some subject that might not be discussed here. The issue to deal with insecurity. I come from a county that is considered insecure. And yesterday in Parliament, as members of Parliament were speaking, most of them were actually alluding to rise cases of insecurity within 30 days. And you can talk about Isiolo, you can talk about Marsabit, Garissa, you can talk about the Kerio Valley, you can talk about the Turkana. So I think for me, the government has within the 30 days failed. Because from the time of Kenyatta to Moi, to Kibaki, to Kenyatta Jr., what the government has actually been doing to the people that are coming from the far north and the northeastern is to react when there is an insecurity situation like the one we saw in Turkana County. The government will mobilize a lot of resources and go and beat everybody up. As we speak today, the people of TRT in Baringo County are suffering, not because they are all thugs. There are few thugs, but then the whole place is barricaded. You cannot take food to TRT now. It is blocked everywhere, and everybody, including the bishops and the pastors, are suffering. Why? Because the government is doing the same thing, the same way, and expecting different results. I expected this government to come up with the different modalities of dealing with insecurity, not to do the same thing Kenyatta did, Moi did, Kibaki did, and everybody. So I think for me, I will even ask now that the government rethink even their strategy of blocking food items to go to Baringo, a place called TRT, because they were thugs that killed security personnel. The same thing has happened in Northeastern. The same thing has happened in the far north. So I'm asking this government within 30 days to reconsider the way they are doing this thing called security operations. I ask this question. When these people are asking for development, if you go to a place in this place called TRT, there's a place that does not have a road, does not have a school, does not even have a church. But when there is a security situation like now, the government mobilized millions, and I'm telling you millions. One person, a commander, could be taking in $1 million shillings in terms of per diem, and there are 400 soldiers. So probably we could be spending 10 million shillings every single day to do a security operation, and we cannot avail this money to do development for these people. So what do we expect? I think the generals of this country, the military personnel of this country have actually wanted the north and the Kerio Valley to remain the way it is so that they become their milking cow for making per diems. So I'll ask the government to move from giving per diems and security monies to go do operations to these people and develop these people. I'm 100% sure once these people are developed, we're not going to see the kind of insecurities we are seeing.
But just what Mheshimiwa is devolution doing? And I'll allow you to answer that question when we come back after the short break.
Yes.
Okay.
well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs.
We are talking about areas where we do not have these social amenities, these facilities that are crucial, that perhaps could get people engaged, and they would overlook these activities of banditry attacks, you know, attacking the other side, cattle rustling and all that.
Well, I think devolution helps. The first thing is issues to deal with national security is a national government function.
Yes.
So we do not expect any governor or any structures of devolution to be able to deal with that.
Right.
And the reason, the thing I was actually alluding to was actually I was speaking to the national government in terms of how they respond to issues to deal with insecurity. Devolution has helped. If you look at, for example, West Pokot, the last 10 years, West Pokot has moved from being an insecure county because there's a lot of devolution development that has taken place. But if you look at a place called TRT, and I'll say this without blinking, there is a lot of exclusion even within the devolved system because TRT is in Baringo County. The reason why West Pokot, which is also Pokots, have actually moved out of the thing called insecurity, and even Turkana County. Turkana County has moved out of that. What we actually see is cattle rustling and small aspects of insecurity that is not in large scale that used to be before devolution. So I can see kudos to the Turkana government, kudos to the West Pokot government. But if you go to places like Laikipia, if you go to places like Baringo, there's some section of people in Laikipia that are not part of the government of Laikipia. And so they're excluded because if you look at the government of Laikipia, it's a section, not all of the people of Laikipia are in that government. Same to Baringo. TRT is completely out. The women rep is not from the TRT place. The MPs, the governor, the senator, the deputy governor, all of them, the CECs, all of them are coming from one section that is developed in Baringo. And so this section is just in Baringo by number and by map, but not by development, because all these guys are coming from out. And so there's a total exclusion because they excluded, they actually excluded because they are told, they actually considered as people that are not part of that. Just same to Laikipia. And so if you go to Laikipia where there is a lot of insecurity, if you go to Baringo where there's a lot of insecurity, these are areas that have been excluded by the devolved government, by county governors and county government. And so for us to be able to say that devolution helps, it does help for places where devolution and development covers the entire county, but in places where there are exclusion like this, and if you even go to Marsabit, there are some section of the communities in Marsabit that do not feel that they are part of the government, and they are excluded. And so because they are excluded, they lag behind development, and when they lag behind development, they find themselves in the issues that we are talking about. So I think there should be a push, even within county government, from the national government, to ensure that these regions are developed. If by political consideration they cannot be developed by the county government, let the national government that remains with a lot of budgets, 85%, then go in and actually cushion these people.
Right.
So devolution, fine, it helps if it covers entirely, but it doesn't help if it doesn't cover in instances that I've actually mentioned.
And we certainly hope that the Kenya government, yes.
Does mean that we don't have representative, elected representative from those areas.
Exactly.
Oh, so sure.
Beyond devolution,
I
even
believe,
as a member of parliament,
I believe
that is not
as a member of parliament,
yes.
There is also wards. What does the ward representative?
And I mean, this is a member of parliament of a different constituency.
I will.
Alluding.
I will answer to that.
Yes.
Look at what happened to parliament recently. There's what we call the tyranny of numbers.
Right.
And we're electing speaker, when we're electing deputy speaker, when we're doing all this, is about numbers. This place has only 6 MCAs out of 30. When there is a voting, because everything in this country is about voting.
Out of 30?
Out of 30, there are only 7 ward representatives.
Okay.
Do we expect them to tilt the equation? Certainly no. And so they are just there because they're supposed to be there. Otherwise, even if the constitution allowed these other people to take over, they will have taken over. So they are there because it is allowed by the constitution. But their voices are not heard. And the reason why I'm calling upon the county government to be fair and the national government to come in when the county government is not fair.
Well, interesting. I mean, this is a member of parliament of a different constituency, raising
a serious concern, because I believe even though these particular members, as elected members, has no numerical numbers on the floor of the chamber, I still believe they can use...
And 7 out of 30 is quite a huge percentage as well.
I think that's an indictment of the governor.
Persuasion mechanism.
Because the governor is the head of the county.
Should be able to...
Is the one who should be able to give equitable distribution of resources.
Right.
But I am not very familiar with TRT because I think I've been the only ones. But I think, I don't know if this is true, that most people, a big percentage of, maybe what he was trying to say, a big percentage of people who live in TRT are from Pokot.
Okay. Exactly.
And that's what he's trying to say. So the Pokots are being marginalized by the Kalenjin. Let's call a spade a spade.
Okay.
That's a fact he's not able to tell us. So what they are saying is that the MPs and the leaders of TRT are Kalenjins who are marginalizing the minority Pokots. That's what he should tell Parliament and the government to act on. Instead of going around corners, because that's a fact. I've had it before. And these MPs, women rep and the rest. But I saw a human rep being very active on that issue the other day. The women rep of Baringo talking about TRT people.
Right.
But anyway, there should be an issue
that goes beyond
that to see how they can rescue the Pokots who are living in TRT, so they can have that solution. Finally, I would like to say that for us to have peace, I mean to not have cattle rustling and so forth, we must open up these countries for development. We must have road infrastructure. Because once you put a road infrastructure, development follows and people get more enlightened. So and as long as they continue being marginalized, that problem is going to continue being a problem. So I think the national government should have a real affirmative action on that area and other northern frontier areas so they can have the necessary infrastructure which is going to have and make those people live in a situation which is above human dignity. That's the problem.
Out of these things arise calls for secession and
exactly.
Out of these talks of marginalization.
And before I because I know I have not get a chance, I would like to mention one single thing about GMO. Let me detract you a bit. Because Mheshimiwas have expressed more on this issue. And when you are talking about GMOs in this country, Mheshimiwa Akuya says that there are GMOs in Kenya. There is a regulation that if you are having GMO product in your supermarket, they should be labeled that they are GMOs. So when you are buying consciously, knowing that these are GMOs. Second point is this.
What then was the essence of the ban?
I'm coming to that now. The issue is, the second issue is that when you are going to address the issue of hunger, it's a short window. But when you are dealing with the issue of GMOs in Parliament and government, please talk on it from the issue of seeds. Because if you import GMO seeds, is when you're going to have a permanent solution, this problem in this country of GMOs, because it's going to be in the part of our genetic pool. Finally, I'd like to say that, as Mheshimiwa put it clearly in his presentation, these GMO seeds, they have what they call terminator technology, or terminator gene in them, such that, you know, traditionally in Africa, we store our grain to plant the next season. So if you plant GMOs, if you depend on GMOs, it means that we shall be depending on seeds from outside for the rest of eternity. Because the terminator gene does not allow you to plant these seeds. Finally, these GMOs only do well when they are subjected to specific chemicals which are produced by the West. So in other words, we are going to volunteering to be slaves of the Western corporations.
Wow.
It's something that must be discussed with a lot of respect to the President. We have to discuss it until the best way to go around this issue. You see, Tanzania has expressed itself that it's not going to allow GMOs from the neighboring countries, and of course the defense of Kenya. So the GMO debate is much bigger, and it has to be addressed seriously, and there should be public participation.
Objectively for that matter. Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa. As we close it up, the Right Honourable Raila Odinga and his counterpart, Kalonzo Musyoka, playing opposition as they should. The Right Honourable Raila Odinga going to Bunge la Mwananchi, the opening, to highlight some of his, disappointments as to how the president has handled matters so far, speaking and alluding to this question of the GMO largely.
Yes, Rita, let me very quickly just comment on that issue of the GMO. And I think the panel here its observation is that it's a serious threat in terms of future production of our local foods, and also how to maintain the same GMO in terms of what it matters. That at least you have to import most of the inputs that you require to go good way or wrong way with this particular production. But that have been the case, and I have heard from the pathologists like they have done a very good research on this. I think these are the informations we need, so that at least as we put matters on the table, then you'll be able to speak from point of knowledge. And you'll be able also to persuade how these matters can be listed. And I think they are not opposing that final product, but they are seriously opposing seedlings. Therefore, I wish if we didn't want to deal with hunger, which is just for short term, I think it is doable by probably importing it, but at least they are persuading that we should not allow to instill it in terms of planting it as our own baby. So that's okay. And coming to the matter on the front page, I think our constitutions have a lacuna, and this lacuna actually was realized at the 2010 new constitution. There before, the manner in which our constitution was crafted, there was an official opposition leader office in the House. And therefore, you couldn't be able to see Honorable Raila Odinga as now purported to be the opposition leader, making his own statements out of the House. He could be having an office where he could be able to speak his own. But now the way the Constitution is crafted, he is represented in the House by a delegated member who takes over the minority side. And therefore, himself, he has no room to come and address the nation from within the House. And it is my hope that, in fact, going forward in future, we need to craft a law, because a law is not cast on a stone. And I'm still persuaded that we need to have back that opposition leader office. So that, in fact, if we want to have that vibrant opposition, let us have an official leader opposition office, and let us also remove the barriers which locks this particular officer from getting into the House. Because surely it is very clear that if you are contending for a presidential position, you cannot contend for parliamentary or any other position. And therefore, outrightly, you locked ourselves from coming to the House. I think let there be a flexibility on how parties can be able to nominate those candidates. Though these candidates are, sometimes you realize that the list of the nomination is forwarded before even the election, the general election, about 2 months ago, before the election. And therefore, nobody has that particular knowledge that is going to lose an election.
Right.
And that is most likely the reason why they don't present themselves into nomination list. But I still think that actually, because we have seen how these things has been creaking, it's obvious that, in fact, we need to think of that official leader of opposition office and still have a room to allow these members to at least either to come in through nomination or otherwise.
Well, interesting. And Mheshimiwa, we come to this point. We have seen a vibrant Right Honorable Raila Odinga, especially when it comes to addressing the matters that bedevil the people of Kenya. Perhaps that's the reason why the handshake was highly faulted, because then we saw again a different face of the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. Do you suppose then he revives who he's originally been? Starting yesterday, going to Bunge la Mwananchi to address these matters that he feels the government is not getting right. And at this very early stage, would we say that it's a little bit too early to start condemning?
Well, for me, I do not support a rising of public anger against government. What I support is that government can be held to account through parliament, and the reason why the constitution was passed. So for me, probably what he was doing is not anything but probably to highlight the kind of issues that he feels the public needs to discuss. But I think more importantly, that needs to be discussed in parliament. So for me, I am not of the opinion that the opposition need to oppose government. The opposition only need to check on government so that government can do the right thing.
And can that be done well at the level of parliament without this proposal that Honorable Gakuya presents, that perhaps we might need to have an opposition office?
Well, I think we should not go back and forth, because the initial constitution that we got actually had that, that office. And the Kenyans thought through and actually said, we now do not need that office. We just need this thing to be
majority, minority.
To be dealt in parliament. The reason why we now came to what we have now. So, but if you think that we need to go back to the old constitution, well, constitutions are reviewed. They are not written on stone like the Bible. And so we can still look at it, but I think Kenyans had a good reason why we had to abolish that office. And I think parliamentarians, as we are now, we can be able to actually discuss this matter. The reason why Kalonzo Musyoka said yesterday that they have strict instruction on their members to reject some of these proposals in parliament is actually the right way to go. Let the members of parliament come and discuss with their counterparts. And if the side that wins, that becomes the decisions of Kenyans. In any case, these members of parliament are in their parliament because Kenyans have sent them to represent them. So whatever they say, whatever the decision they are making on behalf of Kenyans. And I think that is the spirit of the constitution that we are in now. All
right, so this remains roadside declarations in as much as beyond being the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, or over and above his Kenyan?
First and foremost, I would like to say that Raila Odinga was a runners-up in this general election as president, and he had a substantial following, and the base is uneasy. They are still asking for direction from their leader. So Raila Odinga is getting pressure from his supporters to show the way forward. And that's why I suspect, I'm not aware, I'm not sure, that's why he's going to Jivaji Gardens, so that maybe he can get a feel of what his people are saying, and then he can be able to give direction on the way forward.
Right.
Secondly, I'd like to say that this is form of picketing, which is allowed in the Constitution.
Okay.
It's non-violent. There is no really violence which was experienced yesterday. For the question for my colleague here, whether we want to go to the old constitution or not, I think that does not arise, because when this constitution was being enacted in 2010, there was some very spirited attempt to amend some clauses. But because of the divided nature of this country, the way it was between PNU and ODM, none could manage the majority to amend even a single sentence in that constitution. And that's why Kenyans say, okay, let's have it the way it is, even if it's 20% defective. So you have a constitution which was adopted, which we are using today, which is 20% effective. And I think constitutions are served to serve men, not meant to serve the constitution. I believe, before I go to my proposal on the constitution, that I support the president today on the issue of handshake, that he does not really require handshakes. But on the contrary, I would like to say that the problem with the handshake between Uhuru Kenyatta and Right Honorable Raila Odinga, it was not institutionalized. It was a handshake between two men. But these two men, if these two men had said, okay, we have agreed on this, we are going to have a handshake, let each one of us go to our respective parties. Uhuru Kenyatta would have gone to Jubilee, called a national delegates conference, then they could approve the handshake. Raila Odinga would have done the same. And then ODM would have either given a nod or not. So if that nod, if that handshake was actually institutionalized within the respective political parties, it would have been a good thing. But the way it was done, it was not properly midwifed, and that's why I support to William Ruto. That type of handshake is not necessary. But I think an agreement between political parties, which is meant to move this country forward, should always be welcome and should not be debatable. In terms of opposition, it's unfortunate that we don't have a structured opposition. When the president says that he wants to work as government and the opposition to work as opposition, that's the right thing to do. But when we're doing that, before you ask the opposition to do what they should do as members of the opposition, you should give them an enabling environment to perform. Right now, the opposition does not have an office, does not have funds to perform specific oversight activities, and so forth. And that's why I'm saying, as these members of parliament, they're sitting now, are fighting for entrenchment of CDF in the constitution, let us look at the broader constitutional amendment, which can incorporate a few issues, like forming an official office of the opposition, which is funded by government. And if the official office of opposition, which is funded by government, is there, then oversight will be easy.
A government that is already bloated?
Well, yeah, but you see...
An expensive government.
It's expensive, but sorry if I don't have better time for this. A lack of that may push us to one dictatorship. Dictatorship is very expensive to correct. So we better spend more to put us on check than to wait for a result which might be disastrous. My view was that we should uphold the section of the Constitution which says that whoever gets 50+1 becomes president. That's number one. Like William Ruto got 50+1 is president today. But when it comes to forming government, there should be a requirement to make an inclusive government as possible by having coalition with other parties to ensure that we have at least 67% in government, and that the percent which is left is accommodated in the official opposition. That way, everybody will be participating in the governance of this nation. Right now, the winner takes it all does not help. So what I can say is that, as I conclude, is that national peace and security should not be debatable and should go to any extra length to ensure that sustained peace and security is maintained.
Well put. Gentlemen, I'll allow us 1 minute to make our closing submissions.
Thank you. Rita, what I would, my final comment is that, in fact, security is inevitable. Every Kenyan deserves to enjoy peace in this country. And therefore, because we know what has been ailing us, and especially in those areas that are being touted to be the cattle castoring areas, where bandits are word of the day. I think things have now to start being crafted other than what has been the tradition. And this is to take the right measures. If an area like Tiati have these old manners, it is a high time that we must start now doing it on a different way. If these people who lives inside those barriers are people who cannot be able to access road infrastructure, cannot access schools, cannot access hospitals, there's no any administration, and it's an area which is almost a province, then how is this still a Kenya? Is it a Kenya that actually lives in a jungle way? If a place where there is no rule, then if there's no any rule of law, then that's a jungle.
Wow.
And every other time you expect to have those kind of manners. So it's high time this government should address this matter once and all. Let us know what are these intricacies that actually brings us to this particular scenario.
Well,
let us make sure that we start operationalizing using new methodology.
Thank you. I'll allow the other gentlemen to be strict. 1 minute, but we have to be strict.
Yeah.
As I remind you, Mheshimiwa, that please don't say this government, say our government, because you have been very instrumental in bringing this government
it's government
on board.
all of us.
Okay.
Because Kenya is our government. All of
I agree. That's why I'm reminding you.
Whether you're in opposition or whether you are who.
You're not in opposition, Mheshimiwa Titus.
Well, my parting shot today is to ask government to do things differently, and especially in Tier T. Two wrongs don't make a right.
Right.
The fact that there were thugs that killed people, I am sorry for that, and my condolences to the families, and I condemn it. The thugs need to be pursued and taken through the law process. If they made rot in jail, let them rot in jail. But the common person should not be punished. Schools are closing down because of security. The government apparatus, they are closed all the way. You cannot come to Tiati through Laikipia. You cannot come through it through the main Baringo, through Loruk. It is all locked. So the fact that they make everybody suffer because of thugs basically tells us the government has failed. I am actually asking government to invest in intelligence so that they can be able to get the thugs and let them rot in jail and let the common person, the person that is peace-loving, enjoy his peace. It is wrong what the government is doing to actually punish everybody for a sin of others. In fact, the Bible says children cannot be punished because of the sins of their fathers. When a bank is robbed in Kiambu, the whole Kiambu is not locked and everybody is made to suffer. They look for the thugs. This needs to be done to the people of Tier T. They deserve to also enjoy the rights of being Kenyans, for those that are peace-loving.
Well put. 30 seconds.
Let's go for 1 minute. Okay, thank you very much, Leader. I'd like to say that first, in my closing remark, I would like to congratulate His Excellency the President for the steps he has taken to ensure that we have continued stability as a nation. And I would like all of us as Kenyans to support him, because if the President succeeds, we all succeed, and the whole country succeeds. The other issue is that I would like to thank him also for the definition he gave us yesterday of the hustler, saying that hustler means nobody will be left behind. So we hope that all of us Kenyans, under His Excellency Ruto's government, we shall be able to see progress and prosperity within the next 5 years and beyond. I was also encouraged by a statement yesterday that
as we close,
that he would like to see more border riders using their phones for trading than betting, because now there's a lot of betting which is making people impoverished. Finally, I'd like to say that the Hustler Fund, they should be established as quickly as possible. But I also like to make an input that in Kenya, we have got two problems which go together. One of them is lack of access to credit and lack of the capacity to manage the credit. So I hope through this Hustler Fund, we are going to have a section of financial management literacy, so the money does not go to waste.
Well, good.
And
Mheshimiwa, we have to close.
Thank you very much.
And allow you to come and make more submissions next week on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa. Honorable Dr. Njogu Barua, asante sana for speaking to us, as well as Honorable Titus Lutei, Member of Parliament Kajaliba, and Member of Parliament Embakasi North, Honorable James Gakuya. Gentlemen, you're proceeding to Parliament?
Yep.
Yeah. All right, sawa. Let's wait for the business of the day. On this very point, we close this particular segment, not in totality because we have still so much lined up for you.